How does a mafia boss apologize for marrying someone else and destroying your life? He drops $2 million of blood money to buy you your own hospital. He told her there were no strings attached. He was liquidating his entire criminal empire and walking away from the mob just to prove he could be a good man. But walking away from the mafia is never that easy, and now they're both being hunted by the FBI. Pause the video right here, guys. Look at the clock, 3:47 in the morning, and our girl Celine is absolutely wrecked. She is staring at the TV, trapped in that cold blue glow. Why? Because Roman Duval, the mafia boss she literally burned her whole life down for, is marrying another woman on a live broadcast. She has a packed suitcase next to her like a literal gravestone. Roman promised her total freedom, but instead, he gave her a cold wire transfer and orders to vanish. The family Don pulled the strings and wiped out 6 months of romance in a single second. You and I are going to unpack this massive drama together, because honestly, the hardest lesson we all have to learn is that sometimes getting completely betrayed is the only thing that finally snaps you awake. To figure out how we got to this nightmare, we have to rewind the tape. Boston Hospital Trauma Bay, 2 in the morning. Celine is completely drained, 9 brutal hours into her shift. Suddenly, the double doors fly open. 2 heavy enforcers in dark mafia suits drag a third guy inside. He is bleeding out, shirt totally soaked red, but he is not even flinching. He treats a lethal bullet hole like a paper cut, staring with absolute dead eyes. And guys, the real-life lesson here is simple. True danger never kicks the door down screaming. It walks in totally silent, with a freaky, unnatural calm. One of the mobsters barks an order, and hospital protocol just vanishes. This intense wave of pure underworld dominance totally suffocates the room, leaving Celine completely trapped. Watch the main doctor here. He spots a heavy weapon tucked under the goon's jacket and instantly nopes right out of there. Hospital rules say you call the cops immediately, but the bleeding mob boss just shuts down the panic with one ice-cold stare. No cops, he growls. The guy is losing a ton of blood on the floor, but his heartbeat is completely chill. In this insane tension, Celine makes the absolute wildest choice of her life. She steps up and says she can fix him, but listen up. The heavy life lesson here is that we often mistake our own blind stupidity for actual bravery, not realizing we just opened a cage to pet a starving wolf. The enforcers slam his massive body onto the operating table, give her exactly 30 minutes, and barricade the doors. She is totally trapped. The camera zooms right in on her shaking hands. Her doctor training totally hijacks her basic survival instincts. Celine grabs the heavy scissors and rips his bloody shirt open. The bullet is lodged dangerously close to his collarbone, one tiny slip, and he is an instant goner. She reaches for the heavy painkillers, but his bloody hand snaps out and clamps onto her wrist like a total bear trap. It is a crazy flex of alpha control. No sleeping gas, he demands, and his deep voice does not even wobble. The harsh life lesson here is that people raised in brutal underworld violence can never, ever afford to drop their guard. Celine tries to act tough, warning him it will hurt like crazy. But the vibe gets so heavy, you can instantly tell who is actually running this room. He locks those totally dead eyes with hers, and just tells her to hurry up. This absolute refusal to give up control shows just how broken his mind really is. Celine just rolls with it, digging her tools right into his torn shoulder. Her heart is pounding out of her chest, but her hands are super steady. She is literally scraping metal on bone, and this mafia boss does not even flinch. Stick with me here, guys, because this is wild. The real tragic lesson in life is that we build these massive walls to protect our feelings, only to accidentally lock ourselves inside forever, desperate to chill the vibe. Celine tries making small talk. She asks his name. He asks why it matters. She drops a savage joke about being deep inside his chest, just to cope with the insane stress. Pause the screen again. A tiny smirk actually breaks through his stone-cold face. Roman, he whispers. She drops her own name, and his brain immediately starts playing games. Celine, the moon goddess. Your parents were super optimistic, he says. Boom. The mind games have officially started. She mentions her mom loved myths, dropping the bloody bullet into a metal bowl with a loud clank. She claps back, saying his parents clearly loved building literal empires. His jaw instantly tightens. She hit a massive nerve. They favored legacy, he corrects her, sounding super intense. The sobering life lesson here is that the heaviest chains we carry are the family expectations we never even asked for. She finishes stitching him up and asks if he gets shot a lot. He just looks away, completely silent. Let us break down this crazy tension right now. The surgery is done, but he is still staring at her like a starving wolf. "Thank you," he grumbles. Celine puts her tough doctor mask back on. "Do not thank me," she snaps. "Just do not die on my shift." The camera zooms in as they lock eyes, and you feel an invisible rope pull tight. Two heavily damaged people, drowning in trauma, totally recognizing each other. Honestly, the ultimate danger in life is never the obvious enemy charging at you. It is the broken, toxic person who inexplicably feels like home. The Mafia guard knocks on the door. Roman hops off the table, throwing his bloody shirt on. He stops at the exit, surprised she is not asking a million frantic questions. "Why waste my breath?" she mutters to his back as he vanishes into the dark. 3 days later, the creepy Mafia grooming phase kicks off. 24 wildly expensive white roses show up at the hospital with no name. A nurse thinks it is some cute romance. Celine plays it cool, claiming it is just a thankful patient. But guys, normal people send a cheap card, not a massive mobster floral arrangement. Fast forward to week 3, and it gets super dark. A bottle of vintage 2015 wine drops at her desk. This is a massive flex of his underworld power. Celine rubs the dark glass and finds one single letter carved into the label. The harsh reality of human nature is that we completely ignore screaming red flags just because the high of feeling special is so addictive. She absolutely knows she should trash that bottle right now. Instead, she hides it. You and I are going to unpack this massive mistake together. Celine is a literal genius doctor. Her brain is screaming at her to toss this sketchy mob wine instead. She drags that heavy bottle out to her fire escape, pops the cork in the pouring rain, and chugs the essence of poison. Suddenly, Roman steps straight out of the pitch-black shadows of the alley. Boom! The steel trap snaps totally shut. He is leaning against a sleek black sedan that costs more than her whole life, radiating total predator energy. She snaps at him for stalking her, but he smoothly plays it off as just checking in. Here is our shared life lesson today. We foolishly think that just spotting a red flag makes us safe from it. We forget that just standing in the dangerous blast zone is enough to completely ruin us. Celine hypes herself up, acting like she is totally fearless because she works in a crazier. Roman just drops this deep, rumbling laugh. It sounds super warm, but do not get it twisted. A predator only acts warm to trick its next meal. He smoothly asks her out for a fancy dinner. When she hits him with a hard no, he instantly pivots to a sketchy local diner. It is bright and full of people, giving her this fake illusion that she is the one in control. Ignoring every alarm bell ringing in her brain, she agrees to give him exactly 1 hour. She has no idea she is being actively hunted. She is just hooked on the rush of a mafia boss paying attention to her. The absolute tragedy of life is that our desperate need to feel special makes us blindly thank the exact person, locking us in heavy chains. Listen up, because the visual clash in this scene is absolutely insane. The diner is a total dump, flashing with cheap neon lights and smelling like burned coffee. Celine picked this nasty spot purely to show him she is the boss. Roman looks hilariously out of place in his custom mafia suit, but he uses that awkwardness to fake being a humble guy. He pushes the menu away, whispering that he only came here to look at her. When she rolls her eyes, he takes a bite of stale pie and winces. It makes him look so adorably human. But guys, this is the exact toxic dirt where a dangerous trap grows. He fakes being soft just to smash her defenses. The life lesson here is terrifying. Real monsters never show up with their fangs out. They show up with a gentle smile, pretending they just want to listen. We have to look at this together, guys. Roman is putting on an absolute masterclass in mafia interrogation, totally disguised as a cheap date. His eyes lock onto every tiny twitch she makes, vacuuming up her secrets to build a completely fake bond. As the crowd finally clears out into the rain, Celine's gut instinct absolutely screams at her to run. She abruptly stands up and says she has to leave logically. She should sprint to her car and block his number forever. The dude is a literal walking red flag. But under those ugly yellow lights, a super toxic spark catches fire. She pauses, looks back, and whispers a soft maybe. The cruelest lesson of all is this. When your soul is totally starved for affection, even a massive, raging forest fire looks like a completely cozy place to get warm. Guys, look at this absolute madness. Roman drags Celine up to this insane penthouse rooftop, totally staging the whole thing like some twisted movie scene. We are talking glittering city lights, expensive wine, the whole billionaire mafia boss flex. It is a massive power move, designed to completely shut down her brain. Then he drops the ultimate trap, the fake sob story. He tells her he just wanted to be an architect, playing the innocent survivor instead of the ruthless cartel boss he actually is. Stick with me, because we are about to unpack this together. The harsh life lesson? When someone hits you with an insane amount of love bombing right out of the gate, that is not romance. They are just handing you a massive emotional bill you will spend your whole life trying to pay off. Bro, we are literally watching a disaster happen in slow motion right now. Celine is walking straight into the jaws of the trap. She has that classic healer complex. Losing her mom at 16 left her obsessed with fixing every broken guy she meets. And Roman? He reads her red flags like a menu. He drops his voice into this perfectly calculated, tragic whisper, acting like the lonely king of a cursed mafia empire. When she gently touches his scarred knuckles, she is basically signing her own death warrant without even knowing it. It is absolutely wild to watch. Here is the painful truth for today. Empathy is an amazing trait, but if you hand your bleeding heart over to a monster who has zero intention of protecting it, they will just use it as a weapon to completely destroy you. Picture this: it is a quiet morning, but the tension is so thick you could cut it with a knife. The red flags are literally flashing right in her face. We have shady cartel cars parked outside, goons whispering in the hall, and this absolute lunatic casually shoving a loaded gun into his waistband before they even drink their coffee. Celine is a smart, educated doctor, but her brain completely deletes the monster in the room. She forces herself to only see a sad, misunderstood guy eating leftover noodles on her sofa. It is honestly terrifying how easily we trick ourselves. The real lesson here? Humans will straight up rewrite the most dangerous realities just to protect their feelings, falsely believing their love is strong enough to fix a literal ticking time bomb. Fast forward 2 months, and it is 3 a.m. The room glows in a cold blue light, and the steel trap finally snaps shut. Roman plays his ultimate trump card. Staring at the ceiling, he whispers about how much he despises his violent life. Spinning a wild story about a toxic family curse, he totally drops the ruthless Don persona and pretends to be a helpless kid. But listen to his voice, it is completely flat, totally calculated. Celine puts her hand on his chest, basically throwing her own soul away to promise him safety. You guys need to recognize the insane danger here. The absolute worst villains do not keep you trapped by terrifying you. They lock you down by weaponizing your pity until it becomes your own personal prison. Just look at Celine's face during this hug. She feels his shoulders shake, catching this tiny flash of panic. He totally faked just for her. She actually believes she is saving a scared man, completely blind to the absolute black hole inside him. He is not giving her a safe harbor. He is dragging her down into his chaotic underworld, locking in a massive trauma bond. But then the sun comes up, and reality hits hard. The romantic shadows turn into literal mafia hitmen, tailing her to work. Over in the hospital, her best friend Ivy is desperately trying to shake her awake, but Celine is completely hypnotized. The brutal life lesson here is simple. Pretending you do not see the wolves circling your house never makes them go away. It just guarantees they will eat you alive. Bro, look at how badly her hands are shaking as she defends this absolute menace. Celine goes totally scorched earth on Ivy, swearing Roman is gentle, while ignoring the literal trail of bodies he leaves behind. Ivy is the only one seeing the actual hitmen in the shadows. At this point, Celine is way past anything resembling love. This is a full-blown toxic addiction. The thought of walking away literally makes her physically sick. So when Ivy finally gives her an ultimatum, forcing her to choose between staying alive or keeping the mafia boss, Celine immediately bolts for the foggy docks to find him. It is a totally pathetic sight. The sad truth about life. When you force a deeply addicted person to choose between their toxic obsession and their best friend, the poison always wins. Let us zoom in on this insane confrontation at the docks. Celine is practically begging for an exit strategy, just wanting a normal life. And what does Roman do? He stares at the freezing water and casually offers to murder the guys tailing her, totally missing the fact that she just wants to feel safe. When she demands that he take responsibility, you can see the rage tighten his jaw. He starts throwing around fancy mafia buzzwords like legacy and succession, trying to make his bloody empire sound heroic. But the second Celine demands the raw truth, his eyes go dead cold, and he completely shuts her out. Here is the undeniable reality. You cannot ever build a peaceful, stable life with a partner whose entire personality is basically constructed out of massive, violent lies. This is the exact second she finally cracks his armor. Celine looks this terrifying kingpin dead in the eye and calls him out. He is either a helpless prisoner, or he is just a massive coward. It is such a boss move. These mafia guys absolutely love playing the victim, crying over the cage they built with their own hands. For one split second, You actually see a flash of real regret on his face. Celine reaches out, offering him a legit escape hatch from the underworld. But then, boom, his burner phone rings and the whole moment just shatters. The vulnerability dies instantly. He snaps the untouchable cartel boss mask back on and leaves her standing there in the cold. You have to remember, deeply hardwired toxic habits will always crush a tiny, fleeting moment of personal bravery. A couple nights later, the vibe gets incredibly dark. Roman just barges into her apartment, pacing the floor like a total psycho. Then he drops the most outrageous lie of the entire series. He claims the Mafia families are going to war, and the only way to stop the bloodshed is if he marries the daughter of a rival boss. Celine is losing her absolute mind, begging him to just walk away from the game forever. Instead, this guy puts on the ultimate martyr act. He is hiding his own cowardice by pretending he is sacrificing his true love to save the city. It is classic manipulation from a totally broken ego. Listen to me on this one. If you are dealing with someone who constantly blames the universe for their own horrible choices, run away before they completely destroy your life. His insane ego literally sucks the oxygen out of the room. He genuinely believes the underworld will collapse if he is not calling the shots. But the camera pans to Celine, and you can see the glass finally shattering. She realizes he does not have her back to him. She is totally disposable. Feeling her slip away, Roman pulls the dirtiest trick possible. He sells her a fake future. He grabs her face, begging for just 14 more days, swearing they will escape together. It is a fabricated lie just to keep her on the hook. And the worst part? She actually believes him. She sees her whole world burning and still negotiates with the guy holding the matches. The absolute hardest lesson here is that blind, desperate hope is exactly what gets you completely wrecked in the end. The irony of this whole mess is physically painful to watch. Even though her gut is screaming at her to run, Celine caves and buys into this massive escape plan. Just as she drops her guard, Roman drops the nuclear bomb. He looks her dead in the eyes and drops the ultimate confession. By saying he loves her at her absolute lowest point, he locks in her unquestioning loyalty. But then, the ultimate vanishing act kicks off. Over the next few days, you see him physically drifting away in every shot. The texts turn into cold, single-word updates. He is totally weaning himself off her, setting the stage to throw her under the bus. Come on, guys, we have to face facts here. Dragging out a toxic breakup does not soften the blow. A slow, calculated betrayal just carves a permanent scar. Watching her tear herself apart is honestly brutal. Her body knows she is being played, which is why her hands violently shake as she packs her suitcase. Her brain is still drowning in that insane trauma bond. By day 12, the radio silence is absolutely crushing. Roman totally ghosts her, using that cold silence to finally break her spirit. Then the knockout punch lands. A news alert pops up, showing photos of Roman partying and laughing with his new Mafia bride. Staring at the ultimate proof of his betrayal, Celine completely breaks down. She violently launches her phone across the room, refusing to accept it. Life proves time and time again that our minds will completely reject an obvious betrayal just to keep our hearts from entirely shattering into a million tiny pieces. Look at this. We finally hit the absolute rock bottom of this tragedy. It is day 14, the exact day Roman swore they would run away together. Celine is sitting totally alone in this empty house, the rain hitting the glass like a ticking clock. Midnight rolls past in pure silence. Then at 2 a.m, her phone buzzes. One cold text tells her to check the news. Bam, Roman is standing under massive cathedral lights, tying the knot with Celeste. His Mafia boss father orchestrated this nightmare from day one. The screen cuts black on Celine's shattered face. It is a brutal wake-up call, honestly. The hardest lesson you can learn is that some people will gladly build their perfect, golden lives right on top of your completely ruined devotion. Let us zoom right in on Celine for a second. Watch her face, the exact moment her entire reality shatters into pieces. That harsh phone screen lights her up in the dark, showing a massive wire transfer from Roman, literally paying her to disappear. In this insane mob underworld, actually caring about someone is just a loose thread they snip with cash. But check this out, not a single tear drops. That warm hope in her eyes straight up freezes into black ice. She totally rejects the weeping victim role. She grabs her heavy leather coat and kicks open the door to the freezing, pouring rain. She is going directly to his wedding, to make him own his betrayal. Because realistically, sometimes the only way to actually take your power back is to march straight into the jaws of the monster that tried to break you. Stick with me, because she has 0 invites. Instead, she dials Luca Reiner, a low-level syndicate soldier who owes his brother's life to her medical skills. Soon his headlights blast through the massive downpour. Luca is sweating bullets, asking if she is seriously doing this suicide mission. She just stares, running on pure, unstoppable grief. Through the slapping wipers, they pull up to the Laurent estate, a massive fortress built on old money and fresh blood. You and I should really look at poor Luca right here. His hands are literally shaking on the steering wheel, totally trapped between paying back a moral debt and his absolute terror of the cartel. It proves a tough reality we all face eventually. Debts of the heart are almost always paid using the currency of our deepest fears. The car engine clicks off, leaving only the heavy sound of rain hammering against the roof. Luca rubs his face hard. The shadows on the dashboard make this kid look like he aged 10 years. He flat out warns her that crashing a Mafia wedding to confront a cartel boss is a guaranteed death sentence. Notice the sheer weight of his panic here. He is totally paralyzed by fear of the syndicate, yet chained to his gratitude for her saving his brother. He gives a single heavy nod, declaring that after tonight their ledgers are totally wiped clean. They step into the freezing storm, the icy water biting straight through her clothes. As they walk up to the armed guards at the service door, the situation is completely doomed. It is a harsh truth to swallow. Loyalty in the underworld is a massive iron anchor, and it inevitably drags absolutely everyone attached straight down to the absolute bottom. Luca steps up, keeping his voice dead steady, as he tells the guard Celine is doing a secondary security sweep. The massive guard narrows his eyes, stepping dangerously close to inspect her face. You can practically hear the frantic hammering of her pulse. But instead of breaking, she completely weaponizes her past. Years of suppressing terror during hospital codes lock her features into an unbreakable mask. She stares back without blinking, casually dropping the name Castellano, the cartel's ruthless head of security. It is a huge gamble that flawlessly exploits the guard's fear of his bosses. He steps aside, and the heavy steel door clanks shut behind them. Here is the brutal truth, guys. Sometimes your deepest, most painful traumas end up forging the exact mental armor you need to survive the absolute worst moments of your life. The air inside this hidden service corridor is suffocating, smelling of expensive truffles and sharp adrenaline. Luca grips her arm, whispering they have exactly 10 minutes before security gets audited. He searches her eyes and finds nothing but chilling emptiness. The realization hits him like a freight train. Her instinct for self-preservation is totally gone. That is the devastating nature of heartbreak. It silences the rational mind. Swapping out survival for one destructive mission, he points toward an old viewing gallery high above the floor. They ghost through the dimly lit halls, slipping past grotesque displays of stolen Mafia wealth. It is a dangerous reality we all eventually face. When profound grief suddenly grabs the steering wheel, simple logic is always the very first passenger thrown straight out the window. The atmosphere in this place feels downright poisonous, a crushing density of corrupt power that presses against your lungs. Luca works the heavy lock of the gallery door, pulling her onto a dusty balcony. Watch his body language right here. He is only 25, basically a decent kid swallowed up by a merciless Mafia life. He steps back, his chest heaving, and whispers that this is where he gets off. He begs her to remember that these cartel guys do not negotiate. They just erase problems with fatal precision. Right after that, his survival conditioning takes over. He melts into the shadows, leaving Celine totally alone in the dark. It is a harsh, unbending law of nature. You can never approach an apex predator expecting mercy, and you absolutely cannot buy your safety, using the fragile, worthless currency of human empathy. From that dusty balcony, Celine watches this tragic theater play out across the marble below. Syndicate elites clink glasses, hiding their bloodlust behind string quartets and expensive champagne. In the center stands Roman, looking sharp in a black tuxedo next to his new bride. Focus closely on Roman's face. He smiles down at her, and the horrifying part is his warmth looks completely genuine. He is flawlessly mirroring her happiness. Just weeks ago, he played the fiercely protective lover to Celine. Tonight, he is the picture-perfect devoted husband to someone else. It is a chilling, seamless display of psychological fracture. The lesson you need to take away here is genuinely terrifying. A master manipulator rarely fakes his emotions. He simply studies your deepest desires and perfectly mirrors them back to construct your beautiful, inescapable cage. She stays hidden for 20 agonizing minutes, watching the man she loved move through a room of killers alongside his father, Vittorio, an aging mob titan whose violent approval Roman craves. The script fractures. Roman stiffens. He excuses himself, pushes open the glass doors, and steps out into the freezing rain. No coat, no bodyguards. It is a silent, magnetic invitation. Celine's rational mind goes totally dark. She finds a narrow stone staircase and descends. Notice how the setting shifts from the warm gold of the ballroom to the unforgiving gray of the cliffs as she steps into the downpour. The truth of the matter is crystal clear. Finding true closure rarely means discovering a peaceful resolution. More often than not, it demands walking entirely unprotected, straight into a violently destructive storm. Stick with me because we are witnessing the epic collapse of a narcissist. Celine marches across the whetstone, forcing him to face her. When he turns, a catastrophic freeze takes over his body. The terror in his eyes is not about physical danger. It is the crushing weight of actual moral accountability. His two separated realities have violently collided. He tries to regain control, frantically whispering about cartel guards to dodge her questions. But Celine slices right through his deflection, demanding to know what she was actually worth. Roman finally shatters, his voice cracking as he swears his love was genuinely real. Here is the most devastating life lesson of all. Realizing that a toxic person truly loved you while systematically destroying your entire life is a terrifying truth that will absolutely haunt you forever. The camera frames them against this raging, pitch-black ocean. We have officially reached the final discard phase. Celine stands trembling in the rain, confronting the absolute void of his empathy. She abandoned her entire existence for this guy, only to watch him marry a Mafia heiress. Roman's defense remains annoyingly consistent. He deflects all the blame onto the massive pressures of his father's criminal empire. When he flinches, it is not from genuine remorse. It is the sharp sting of a narcissistic injury. He absolutely despises being challenged. In that singular moment, the fog completely clears for Celine. She realizes he always had a choice. He simply preferred the shiny crown over her loyal devotion. The bitter lesson here is undeniable. You can sacrifice your own sanity to save a broken person, but you can never force them to actually choose your love in return. Let us pause the video right here and unpack the dark anatomy of this tragedy. Roman screams over the howling storm, confessing everything. His ruthless father found their escape plan and promised to brutally torture Celine if he left. So, what did Roman do? He completely folded. He took the coward's exit, married the rival cartel heiress, and made the woman he loved despise him just to keep her breathing. Hearing this confession, Celine tips her head back, letting out a hollow, agonizing laugh. The irony here is absolutely suffocating. In his desperate attempt to protect her from a monster, Roman mutated into the exact same terrifying beast. You and I have probably both learned this the hard way. The brutal reality is that the people who try the hardest to be our protective shield are often the exact ones who inflict the deepest, most permanent wounds. Yo, picture the framing of this final shot. Celine stands in the pouring storm, dismantling his weak excuses like an absolute pro. She forces Roman to look at the blood on his hands. He is literally running his toxic father's playbook, tossing her to the wolves to keep his Mafia empire intact. Roman stares back, totally paralyzed by guilt. When she begs him to walk away, he actually whispers that he cannot. Celine tilts her head, her voice dropping to a lethal calm, asking if he cannot, or if he simply will not. He tries to dress up his cowardice as some grand sacrifice. Let us cut through the fake hype. He loves her enough to want her alive, but is way too terrified to fight for her. Life drops a heavy lesson here. Without the raw courage to face the fire, love is just a beautifully decorated cage. Pull the camera back and look at Celine before the shadows swallowed her whole. She had a peaceful life until Roman totally crashed into it. Now the frame tightens on her face. She stares down the exact dude who fractured her mind. The guy who swore eternal devotion before marrying another woman just 6 hours later. Wild, right? Roman throws out hollow apologies, but she sees right through his terrible acting. A cheap bandage can stop the bleeding when his crime family painted a massive target on her back. She wants him to confess the ugly truth. He was simply too terrified to burn his dark empire to the ground to save them both. It is a bitter lesson we all learn. Running away from your own personal demons will always end up destroying the very people you claim to love the most. That accusation hits him like a total gut punch. The camera lingers on his trembling hands as his polished exterior completely crumbles. He tries to deny it, but his chest heaves and his voice cracks. Celine twists the blade deeper, her tone ice cold. She reminds him that playing the obedient Mafia son is always easier than going to full-blown war. Right here, our so-called tragic hero finally breaks down. He confesses the horrific reality. He does not fear his own death, but the agonizing image of his ruthless father tearing her apart. He chose to play the villain just to make sure her heart kept beating. But that brings us to a heavy life lesson. Merely keeping someone breathing is never the same as granting them a life actually worth living. Watch this agonizing sequence unfold. Roman finally admits he lacks the courage to let her walk away. The camera catches a shattering realization on her face. Beneath her blazing fury is an ocean of suffocating grief. The real tragedy is that Roman actually believes his own fake script, playing the noble martyr. As he reaches for her, she violently shoves him back, building an impenetrable fortress. Then he drops a truly pathetic confession. He risked a bullet to the head to sneak into her wedding, desperate to look into her eyes and find pure hatred. He literally needed her punishment to absolve his own lingering guilt. The lesson here is loud and clear. Deeply wounding another person, merely to bandage your own bleeding conscience, is the absolute highest form of selfishness. We are witnessing a masterclass in emotional destruction as Celine dismantles his delusion. Roman begs her to believe his noble intentions, but the lighting casts hollow shadows on his face. She knows he is just protecting his fragile pride. She lays out the cold facts, forced to choose between the woman he loved and his blood-soaked mob. He chose the mob. He weeps, claiming he would choose her with a gun to his head. But she wrecks his fake martyrdom. She delivers a piercing truth. True love means someone else matters more than your own safety and power. Roman collapses into sobs, realizing his grand plan totally failed. He actually thought breaking her mind would save her life. It brings us to a harsh truth. Manipulating someone just to protect them will only leave both of you in absolute ruins. Stay with me, because we are at the exact frame where this trauma bond permanently snaps. Celine delivers the fatal blow. By deciding she was too fragile for his dark reality, he destroyed their future without giving her a choice. The camera captures his physical recoil. He stumbles backward into the shadows, begging her to flee. She sees right through his projection. He is the one suffocating under his family's grip, yet remains too paralyzed to break the chains. As she condemns him for choosing his father's violent chessboard, the atmosphere shifts. A cartel enforcer glides onto the terrace like a predator, scenting blood in the water. The timing is a cruel, cinematic irony. It teaches us a brutal reality. You can never construct a peaceful home inside the borders of a deadly war zone. The lighting drops 10 degrees in a single heartbeat. The enforcer locks his dead eyes on Celine, his hand sliding toward the cold steel under his jacket. Roman abruptly snaps out of his weeping. He throws his body into the space between them, barking a desperate command. The tension hums like a live wire. The guard weighs his loyalty to a terrifying boss against the sun's fleeting spine. Before backing away into the dark, the adrenaline vanishes, leaving Roman hollowed out by his own cowardice. He whispers that the streets will soon run red. In this breathless moment, the romantic illusion completely shatters. She looks at the man she would have bled for, and sees only a hollow ghost. It is a chilling truth. The person you love can vanish, long before they actually walk out the door. Ripping away the romantic filters is the only way to survive this tragedy. Celine finally sees her Mafia hero was just a fairy tale, disguising a rotting truth. The camera lingers on Roman, a broken boy standing in the freezing rain. He will always prioritize his own skin over true devotion. He has just enough heart to ruin hers, but lacks the spine to build anything real. As she turns her back, he hurls one final declaration of love into the wind. Celine does not even break stride. She hears the emptiness in his voice, walking away while the adrenaline burns. Carry this wisdom forward. Surviving means staring the ugly truth right in the eye instead of embracing a comforting lie. His noble sacrifice was just cowardice, dressed in a tailored suit. The second she steps beyond his toxic gravity, the tension breaks and her armor falls to pieces. Celine collapses into breathless sobs, mourning the ghost of a man she thought she knew. But the underworld offers zero intermissions for grief. A hand grips her shoulder from the shadows. It is Luca. His eyes dart frantically, operating on the pure panic that keeps soldiers alive. He shoves her into an untraceable sedan, knowing they tripped a fatal wire. As the tires scream against the wet asphalt, Luca shoots her a glance through the rearview mirror, silently asking if closure was worth the immense risk. She nods as the estate fades to black. A profound lesson emerges here. Sometimes you have to walk right into the fire to permanently burn away the chains of your past. Watch that sprawling mansion recede in the glass, looming like a marble tombstone for a decaying bloodline. Roman is already sinking back into his gilded cage, preparing for the marriage his father arranged. Inside the fleeing car, Celine whispers that she harbored a tiny ember of hope. Luca bluntly reminds her that hope offers zero armor against hollow-point bullets. The torrential rain beats against the roof, making the vehicle feel like a sinking coffin. Suddenly, the phone glows with an unknown caller id. The voice is not enraged, it is an icy silken whisper that paralyzes the soul. Damien Duval, the mob kingpin, shifts the very oxygen in the car. It is a terrifying reminder for us all. The absolute deadliest predators in nature never need to roar to make their prey freeze in total terror. The weight of that name drains the color from Luca's face. Damien skips the theatrical threats, launching into a masterclass of psychological torture. With the flat delivery of a true sociopath, he recites their exact movements, proving his eyes are everywhere. He paints a gruesome picture, promising that if Celine ever looks at his son again, her death will be agonizingly slow. He orchestrates his words perfectly, designed to fracture her mind with sheer panic before he ever lifts a blade. Her body goes rigid, shutting down as she forces out a breathless surrender. He grants her exactly 24 hours to vanish from the earth, and then the line goes dead. The silence in the car is deafening. The lesson here is absolute. You can never negotiate with the devil. You can only run. Let us freeze the frame. You and I need to witness the exact second Celine accepts her old life is dead. Luca is drowning in panic, and in this underworld, a panicked soldier means the Reaper is already in the back seat. Her phone buzzes. $50,000 hits her account. Do not mistake this for romance. Roman sent that blood money because he is a coward, trying to purchase a clean conscience after feeding her to the wolves. Celine's instinct is to hurl the cash back, clinging to her pride. But the script flips, revealing a brutal reality. When a monster tracks your scent, the moral high ground will not buy a train ticket. She buries her ego and accepts the funds, learning a hard truth sometimes. Sacrificing your righteous pride is the only way you survive the night. Let us unpack this absolute madness together, guys. The camera slams into a map of Portland, the absolute edge of the country. Luca is out here pulling serious Black Ops moves, mapping a cash-only ghost route to wipe Celine's digital footprint. But watch his body language. When she asks if he will be okay, the dude just gives this miserable, helpless shrug. He knows he is a disposable pawn, and fully expects a brutal Mafia beatdown like it is just a normal Tuesday. Then he drops the hardest truth: she has to cut the emotional cord completely. Bleeding out grief on the run is like swimming in a shark tank with open wounds. Here is a harsh life lesson for you. Sometimes surviving the absolute worst storms means you have to completely hollow yourself out first. Bro, look at the visual framing in this scene. The cruelty is entirely on purpose. Celine genuinely thought her pure empathy could scrub the blood off a literal Mafia prince. We all fall into that trap, right? Thinking we are the magical exception to a guy's lifetime of toxic conditioning. But in the syndicate, there are no exceptions, only fresh graves. Luca shoves a bag of cash into her shaking hands and absolutely ghosts her, leaving her with one impossible job: stay breathing. Watch her standing in the harsh, nasty glare of that bus terminal. The peeling walls perfectly mirror the absolute wreckage of her mental state. The fairy tale is super dead. It leaves us with an incredibly simple, quiet truth to carry. You can never heal your soul inside the exact same slaughterhouse that just finished breaking you down. The camera pulls way back to show us the absolute emotional wreckage left behind. Celine traded her own safety for a mobster whose cowardice was always way bigger than his capacity to love. Notice how she drags herself onto that rattling bus at 4 a.m, peeling off her wet coat like it is dead skin. When she catches her reflection in the cracked window, you can actually see the very last spark of hope completely die in her eyes. The sweet, compassionate nurse who thought she could fix a broken boy. Yeah. She is entirely gone. She burned away the exact second he held another woman's end. The face staring back now is cold and scarred. It points to a heavy life lesson we all have to face eventually. Surviving a deeply selfish person always means leaving a piece of your own soul behind in the ashes. The lens just sits on her, under the nasty, flickering hum of those cheap fluorescent lights. Look at the insane tension in her shoulders against that hard plastic seat. It is 3 a.m, and every single time headlights wash over the wet pavement, she flinches hard. She is terrified Roman is going to bust through those doors with his goons. It has been barely 24 hours since the man she loved traded her in for a political marriage. When the bus doors finally hiss open, she steps into the dark without looking back at Boston even once. The crying phase is over now. She is just an empty shell. It is a quiet reminder of a brutal reality. Choosing to walk away from a beautifully packaged lie rarely feels like a massive win usually. It just feels exactly like grieving a death. Stick with me here, because you and I know exactly how these massive tragedies play out. The first rush of escape tricks you into feeling totally free, but honestly, it is really just the anesthesia of shock. Watch the amber streetlights wash across her pale face as the bus tears down the highway. She is completely numb. Her brain literally cannot process that she was just discarded and hunted like an animal. That perfect version of herself that Roman molded? She is dead and gone. What sits under that cheap blanket right now is raw, naked survival instinct. It teaches us a brutal but necessary truth. Real healing usually requires us to sit quietly in the absolute dark first. Years later, she will look back at the sound of those tires on wet asphalt as the exact moment she finally refused to be a victim. Running 3,000 miles away is basically slapping a tiny bandage over a massive bullet wound. Portland greets her with this heavy, weeping drizzle that smears the neon signs into the puddles. It is super late when she finally drags herself off the bus. Completely on her own, she pays for a nasty cash-only motel room. The camera lingers on peeling wallpaper and a mattress that sags like an open grave. You can practically smell the cheap bleach. She turns the deadbolt and jams a wooden chair under the knob with shaking hands. She backs away, and right then, all the adrenaline just drains out of her. Her knees slam into the stained carpet. The simple truth is totally unavoidable. The absolute hardest part of running from your dark past is the quiet moment you finally stop moving, and the crushing pain catches up to you. The camera stays uncomfortably close on her face, as the physical weight of the psychological war zone sets in. Guys, this is not just crying, it is a total full-body collapse. She slumps against that scratched wooden door, staring into the pitch dark until morning light bleeds through the cheap blinds. But with the dawn, that basic human urge to survive wakes up again. She buries the massive pain and rents a miserable little apartment above a greasy diner, handing the shady landlord crumpled cash. No background checks, no emotional traps, absolutely no invisible strings controlling her life. The room is totally barren, but the takeaway is profound. We always think peace has to look incredibly beautiful. In reality, sometimes peace is simply the quiet, heavy relief of being completely forgotten by the exact people who broke you. The shot pans across her new reality, and you notice the room is set up purely for defense. A stained futon, cheap thrift store pans. There is zero comfort here. It is just bare, gritty existence. But even ghosts have to eat, right? She knows a regular hospital job would alert Roman's syndicate instantly, so she slips into a crumbling, wildly underfunded clinic in East Portland. She sits across from Dr. Marcus Webb. The guy has these hollow eyes that look like he has not slept a wink in a solid decade. He stares at her shaking hands and never even bothers to ask for her real name. He only cares if she can hold a needle steady. It is this incredibly quiet collision of two totally ruined people. The harsh beauty of hitting absolute rock bottom is that you finally meet others who know exactly how cold the floor really feels. Watch exactly how she uses her own brutal exhaustion as a weapon. The clinic is a non-stop blur of trauma and harsh buzzing lights. Celine intentionally grinds herself down to the absolute bone, working 16-hour shifts just so her brain is way too tired to process any memories. Standing under a dim bathroom bulb, she takes a pair of cold steel scissors and violently chops off her own hair. She dyes it pitch black and hides her face behind cheap glasses. Her clothes just hang off her thinning frame now. Looking into that cracked mirror, the sweet woman who trusted a literal monster is officially dead and gone. It serves as a really tough reminder about what survival actually demands in the real world. Sometimes, to make it out of a burning house alive, you have to completely burn down the person you used to be. We're about to uncover what really went down, so stay with me. 6 painfully quiet weeks go by then, right in the middle of stitching up a patient. Her hidden burner phone buzzes. Lucas' name flashes on the cracked screen. The camera captures her jaw clenching hard as she slips into a freezing alleyway. Over the static, Luca sounds absolutely terrified. Roman is literally tearing the entire city apart looking for her. The same guy who tossed her aside like garbage has spiraled into an unhinged obsession, burning his Mafia world to the ground just to find her. His manic need for control is about to shatter her quiet life. It exposes a really dark truth about toxic relationships. The exact people who completely break you will often demand the exclusive right to hold on to your shattered pieces. You can physically see the pure devastation hit her face. Standing in that freezing alley, Celine tries to hold it together, but Luca drops a massive truth bomb. Roman did not push her away to keep her safe. Damien, the crime family's ruthless patriarch, planned the entire betrayal from the start. The old man purposely leaked their secret to rival gangs, creating a totally fake crisis just to force his son into a profitable political marriage. He treated his own son's heart like a cheap poker chip. Celine's whole tragedy was manufactured. She gave up her entire life for a guy who was just a dumb puppet on his dad's stage. It highlights a hard lesson about the cycle of hurt. Many times, the people who completely destroy our lives are actually just playing out the damage from a much larger, darker game of control. Let us step back and look at the twisted dynamics of this crime family. The real horror of being raised by a mafia tyrant is not the daily violence, it is realizing you are literally just a tool in their toolbox. Blinded by his own massive ego, Damien actually bragged about destroying his son's romance for a profit, but arrogance always catches up to you. A quiet lackey secretly recorded that sick conversation and handed the tape straight to Roman. Just imagine the absolute blinding rage in Roman's eyes. When he discovers his whole life is a lie, he beat his own father half to death in public, putting the old mob king on life support. The life lesson here is impossible to ignore. If you spend years treating a loyal heart like a weapon to be used, you cannot be surprised when it finally turns around and absolutely destroys you. Look at how insanely fast an empire burns to the ground when the heir stops caring about the crown. Roman is running entirely on panic mode now. He tears up the arranged marriage contract, basically setting fire to his own mob legacy. His only goal is finding Celine, sending an army of trackers to hunt her down for some twisted absolution, but you and I need to look closely at Celine's steady hands. She does not flinch. Damien might have rigged the game from the start, but Roman still made the final choice to drop her. That brutal reality does not just magically wash away with his regret. It points to a heavy truth we all have to accept about forgiveness. A desperate apology almost never fixes the shattered glass. Most of the time, it just proves that you knew exactly how valuable the person was the second you dropped them. Look at the absolute trap closing in on our girl Celine right now. We have all seen this mob trope before, but the framing here is next level. The camera is locked on her in the cold glare of a monitor as she literally begs a hacker to wipe her digital footprint. And boom, here is the massive plot twist. Roman did not stab her in the back for a promotion. His toxic dad weaponized the guy's love, convincing Roman that breaking her heart was the only way to keep her breathing. Celine's phone, totally shaking. She is not scared of the mafia. She is terrified because she actually feels bad for him. Empathy is a beautiful thing, but here is the life lesson. Giving your sympathy to the wrong person is often the exact blade that ends up destroying you. The camera instantly cuts to Celine faking a normal life, but we know the truth. Even knowing Roman was a puppet in his dad's twisted mafia games, that betrayal is still a gaping wound. She smashes her phone and hides out in the blinding lights of a hospital ward, playing the exhausted doctor to perfection. But trauma does not just pack up and leave. Weeks go by, and the clinic goes dead quiet when a manager mentions a visitor from Boston named Ivy. Celine's blood runs totally cold. Every single step toward that waiting room looks like she is walking through an active minefield. The dread is literally radiating off her shoulders. Take it from her, guys. You can change your zip code and your name, but you can never truly outrun the ghosts of your past. The visual contrast here is absolutely wild. Picture this: Ivy is dripping in flawless, expensive leather, sitting right under the cheap, blinking lights of a rundown clinic. She looks like a literal ghost from the rich mob world Celine ran away from. When they head back to Celine's trashy apartment, the raw disgust in Ivy's eyes is pure cinema. Celine acts all tough, claiming she found real freedom in this absolute dump, but the camera tells a totally different story. Celine is not saving herself at all. She just built a miserable little cage where she finally gets to hold the lock and key. It is one of the harshest realities of survival. The heavy iron walls we build to keep the bad guys out usually just end up locking us inside with our own worst demons. Stick with me here, because this is where the whole plot completely shatters. Ivy did not fly across the country just to judge a messy apartment. She drops an absolute nuke of a plot twist. The toxic mafia Don is officially dead at 58. The papers say heart attack, but in the syndicate, poison is the ultimate power move. Celine literally gasps for air. Ivy leans in and confirms that Roman finally snapped, taking his own father off the board for good. She is begging Celine to come back to Boston, acting like the nightmare is over. But honestly, history teaches us a pretty ruthless life lesson. When you finally take down the monster ruling the house, You do not get peace. You just create a wide-open throne for a much angrier, deadlier king. We instantly cut to the absolute bloodbath of Roman's new era. He is going completely rogue, wiping out all his dad's old muscle and washing the syndicate in red. But through all this mafia chaos, his crazy obsession with finding Celine is the only thing keeping him human. Hearing this, Celine rolls her eyes, trying to play the unbothered queen. Ivy is not buying it for a second. She knows Celine is totally trapped in a trauma bond with the guy who ruined her life. Ivy drops the heavy question. What if Roman changed? Celine goes ice cold. He folded when her life was on the line, and that is a massive red flag you cannot ignore. Pay attention to this lesson. You can never build a secure future with a man who has already completely crumbled under the pressure. Check out how the freezing rain smashing against the window perfectly matches Celine's miserable vibe. She glares at Ivy, demanding to know what her actual game plan is. Ivy just stares back, remembering how Celine literally shattered and ran away into the night. Without even yelling, Ivy totally calls her out. Celine is not living a real life, she is just a hollow shell drifting through the days. Ivy does not want them to get back together. She just wants Celine to face Roman one last time and break that toxic mental chain. Celine loses it, calling him a coward who picked mafia power over her. But here is the hard truth of the matter. Running away from your fears does not magically cure them. It only gives them permission to hunt you from a distance. Celine wraps herself up in this intense, bitter rage, mostly because staying mad is way easier than dealing with a broken heart. But Ivy pokes the wound anyway. Celine finally cracks, admitting the scary thought keeping her up at night. What if Roman is the exact same villain, just wearing a more expensive suit and spitting smoother lies? Ivy throws her a brilliant lifeline. If he is still trash, you just turn around and walk away forever. The camera zooms in on Celine's tired face as all those crazy mafia memories flash by. The leaked audio, the old boss, Roman going totally dark, exhausted. She finally caves and takes the hotel room key from Ivy. Being furious is a great defense mechanism. But eventually, you have to drop the heavy shield if you actually want to heal. Right before leaving, Ivy drops one last crazy detail. Roman is completely losing his mind, crushed by the guilt of his own betrayal. Celine spends the next 2 days working double shifts at the clinic, desperately trying to block out the massive drama in her head. But on day 3, her little fake life gets blown to pieces. A nurse randomly mentions 3 guys in expensive suits, asking questions down in the lobby. Boom. The mafia found her. All that running across the country literally did 0 good. Pure panic hits her as she realizes she is completely cornered. It is a harsh reality check. You can run to the absolute edge of the map, but you can never hide from your own shadow. Avoiding your problems does not fix them. It just makes the final crash way worse. With the walls closing in super fast, Celine finally bites the bullet and makes the call. She goes full boss mode, dropping ironclad rules. They are meeting at a packed coffee shop in Seattle called Zeitgeist. Saturday, high noon. She straight up warns him that if she sees a single mafia goon, she is ghosting him forever. But the second she hangs up, she looks sick to her stomach. It is that classic, toxic human urge to walk right back into the fire that burned you. Why go meet your worst enemy? She keeps whispering the word closure like it will magically save her. As she drives there, she practices her meanest insults. We all beg the universe for closure, but let us be real. Half the time, we are just looking for an excuse to rip the stitches out one last time. Listen to me on this one, because you have to see how the body always betrays a stressed-out mind. Celine is hiding in the corner of the cafe, staring at the door like she is waiting for an executioner. Noon hits. Roman walks in, and the visual is honestly shocking. The untouchable mafia prince is gone. The guy looks completely wrecked, with pale skin and huge dark circles from 0 sleep. He walks toward her super slow, like the floor is covered in landmines, and slumps into the chair without saying a word. Celine sees his raw misery, and immediately feels a spike of pity, and that right there is the deadliest trap. Seeing the person who completely broke you looking sad is the fastest way to make you forget about your own massive scars. The awkward tension here is literally choking them. Celine finally breaks the silence, using dark humor to hide the fact that she is about to cry. She jokes that she must be a massive masochist for even showing up. The cinematography is genius here. They are in this super normal cafe surrounded by people drinking lattes, completely clueless about the insane mafia showdown happening in the corner. Celine finally drops the ultimate question. Who actually took out his dad? Roman's jaw clenches so hard it might snap. He swears he did not pull the trigger, but totally admits he wanted to. The tragic rule of the criminal underworld is simple. When you raise your kid in absolute cruelty, the suspect list for your murder is always going to include your own family. Let's pause the video right here, because the toxic truth is finally coming out. Roman starts explaining his master plan with zero emotion, like he is reading a grocery list. Bro literally thought that shattering Celine's world was the only way to keep her safe from the mob. In his messed up head, isolating her made him some kind of dark knight. But Celine leans in and completely destroys his logic. She tells him that taking away her choices and calling it protection is not romance. It is just high-level abuse. It is a really tough pill for him to swallow, but it is true. You cannot force a shield on someone who never asked for it. Real love means having the guts to face the scary stuff together, not locking someone up in a shiny cage just to keep them breathing. Let you and I look at this absolute madness, because Roman is looking like a walking ghost. His eyes have bags heavy enough to sink a ship. Celine is standing there totally stiff, basically waiting for the mob boss plot twist where he pulls a knife. But no, the guy is just crushed. He drops the craziest promise ever, swearing to completely ghost the Mafia and leave all that dirty cash behind. Celine is instantly screaming red flags, because underworld predators do not just wake up and work 9 to 5. Honestly, this shows how messed up surviving toxic drama is. When you spend years building a massive emotional fortress to survive the freezing cold, you completely forget how to enjoy the warmth when someone finally lights a real fire. Celine is not buying this for a second. She completely calls his bluff, telling him nobody just hands in a 2-week notice to the mob. But Roman looks at her with these terrifyingly clear eyes. He drops a massive truth bomb, admitting his biggest fear is not taking a bullet, but looking in the mirror and seeing his ruthless father staring back. Celine goes absolutely nuclear. She throws every single lie and every ounce of trauma right at his face. You would expect him to fight back, right? Nope. He just stands there and takes the ultimate verbal beatdown, admitting he has zero right to ask for a second chance. It leaves us with a pretty heavy reality check. Real accountability means carrying the full weight of the massive mess you made, without ever crying for a free pass. The tension in this scene is literally suffocating. Roman slumps his shoulders and straight up admits he was an absolute coward when it counted. You can instantly see Celine lose all her raging fire, crashing into this heartbreaking realization that they are never getting a normal life. She gets desperate and yells at him, asking why he is suddenly playing the tragic hero. His comeback hits like a freight train. He stares right into her soul and tells her she deserves a completely clean slate, not some shattered walking disaster begging for forgiveness. It is a super brutal pill to swallow. Sometimes the people whose love burns the absolute hottest are the exact ones who need to walk away into the dark, just so the other person can finally learn how to breathe again. You need to see the insane tragedy of this moment. Roman is standing out there in the freezing rain, soaking up all the blame. Celine demands to know why he was hardcore stalking her if he actually wanted to leave. Slowly, he pulls out a secret picture of her charity clinic. Plot twist, he was only using his shady mob connections to block his father's hitmen from finding her. He realized the ultimate flex of love was writing himself out of her story. Celine is totally frozen. She was geared up to battle a mobster, but she just watched the villain unlock her cage and throw away the key. Here is the wildest truth. True love is having the absolute guts to let someone fly away, instead of keeping them trapped in your personal mess. Watch this absolute mental breakdown happen right on screen. Celine spent forever building a titanium wall to block out his toxic mob boss energy, but a quiet, respectful goodbye that completely shatters her defenses. As Roman turns his back to walk away, her brain short-circuits. She literally sprints after him into the pouring rain, screaming her lungs out. She demands to know why he is throwing the towel in so fast. Her traumatized mind is begging the exact dude who ruined her life to spin around and start a gang war just to keep her. It is a wild, twisted paradox. Life has this funny way of showing us the truth. The heaviest chains holding us back are rarely locked onto us by someone else. They are usually the ones we absolutely refuse to drop from our own grip. Roman hits the brakes in the freezing rain. Celine dumps all her emotional baggage right onto the street, totally lost in a crazy mix of pure rage and obsession. She screams that his dramatic exit is just a lazy excuse to dodge putting in the actual work. Roman whips around, and you can literally see the torture on his face. He swears that walking away is tearing his heart out, but he is doing it to buy her freedom. She scans him for a lie, but only finds a completely shattered dude. Celine admits she might never forgive him, but living without him is a nightmare she cannot handle. The brutal truth about surviving trauma is that you rarely get a shiny new beginning. You just have to figure out how to breathe in the smoking ruins of what is left. In total panic mode, Celine pitches the most unhinged idea ever. What if they fake amnesia and pretend to be strangers with matching emotional baggage? It is a wild attempt to glitch the matrix and ignore the hell he put her through. The crazy part is, Roman's icy mobster face softens into a tired smile, like he just dropped a massive weight. Her voice shakes as she admits she's way too burnt out to stay. Mad, she reaches out to touch his jacket, and boom, they snap right back into their toxic trauma bond. It is gut-wrenching watching them grab coffee, trying to bury their demons under fake smiles. The reality is dark, but so human we will easily wrap ourselves up in a massive cozy lie just to dodge the absolute terror of facing the world by ourselves. You and I know exactly where this train is heading. The camera follows them through damp alleys, literally using each other as crutches for their ruined vibes. They duck into a gloomy little cafe, forcing down food after days of non-stop panic. The chat is completely fake, an Olympic sport of dodging the massive red flag sitting between them. But this chill vibe has a strict countdown timer. Out of nowhere, the mood flips. Roman drops the nice guy act, locking in with that ruthless mob boss glare, drilling right into her charity's bank records. The room gets instantly freezing cold. It is a seriously creepy wake-up call. No matter how fast you sprint away from your past, your absolute darkest habits will eventually pull up a chair and sit right across the table from you. Roman casually offers to drain his father's shady empire dry and dump all that cartel cash straight into her charity. Celine totally stiffens up. She figures he is just another rich mob kid trying to buy a VIP ticket to heaven. But Roman shuts that down fast with a heavy confession. He tells her this is not about scrubbing the blood off his record. He knows the nightmare he caused is a debt he can never pay. Instead, he wants to hand over his family's twisted weapons of power, letting her flip that dark money into something that saves lives. He is literally surrendering his entire crown. It hits hard. You cannot magically erase the messed up things you have done. Real redemption only starts when you take your absolute most toxic pieces and forge them into something genuinely beautiful. Watch this masterclass in Mafia manipulation unfold. Roman does not cry and beg for forgiveness. Instead, he just slides a blank check across the table. The camera zooms into Celine's burnt-out eyes. Her moral compass is screaming to reject the cartel money. But her clinic is going bankrupt. He is totally weaponizing her exhaustion. She sits up straight, laying down hardcore ground rules to feel like she is the boss. Roman just leans back with this insanely dark, cocky smirk. He already won the game. When they shake on the deal, his hand wraps around hers and holds on for 1 second too long. That tiny touch is an absolute jump scare. The life lesson here is terrifying. Toxic energy rarely kicks your door down. It just chills in the shadows until you are way too exhausted to remember to lock up. Check out how smooth his execution is. Roman dials his lawyer, bulldozing over the boundaries Celine just built. They spend an hour drafting contracts. This corporate paperwork gives her a dangerous false sense of security. It feels like mature adults handling business without drama. But this is the ultimate villain magic trick, wrapping the target in a cozy blanket before pulling the trapdoor. Once outside, the business vibes vanish. Roman pauses, his voice dropping softly as he asks to see her again. Every survival instinct she has is screaming. Here is the reality check. Forgiveness is great, but blind trust is usually just your trauma wearing a handsome disguise. Our broken brains will happily dress up our absolute biggest red flags to look exactly like our deepest desires. The camera frames Celine on the train platform. You can pinpoint the exact second. Her common sense deletes itself. She is trapped in the obsessive predator stare of a guy raised by Mafia hitmen. Every brain cell is screaming at her to run. But that insane trauma bond completely hacks her nervous system. She catches her breath, whispers for him to call her, and leans right in for a crazy, reckless kiss. It is a tragic collision of deep grief and pure toxic addiction. As her train rolls out, the camera leaves Roman glued to the concrete. His face is a wild mix of absolute agony and heavily poisoned hope. The final lesson here is absolutely brutal. When a human soul is totally starving for just a tiny drop of real affection, the mind will easily find an excuse to stand dead center in front of a loaded weapon. Picture this right off the bat, guys. We zoom in on Celine, slumped against the freezing glass of a moving train. She looks completely hollowed out. Why? Because she just casually handed the keys to her entire existence to a guy who practically was pure danger. Her buddy Marcus warned her, "You can run to the edge of the map, but your shadow is still waiting for you." Are we really supposed to believe the heir to a massive mafia throne is just going to wash the blood off his hands? It is a total hostage fantasy. She is desperately hoping her love can fix a fractured killer. We have all been there, right? Here is the brutal life lesson. We would way rather wrap ourselves in a cozy, warm lie than stand outside in the freezing winds of the cold, hard truth. In her head, she is literally painting this soft movie scene where Roman magically washes all his dirty cartel money clean. She thinks he is just going to wipe his dad's bloody legacy off the map. But come on, this is the criminal underworld, not a fairy tale. 3 months ago, Celine would have laughed in your face if you told her she was falling for a mob boss. But here is the thing you and I need to unpack today. We are absolutely terrible at guessing exactly how much pressure it takes to snap our own breaking points. Boom, 6 days later, reality kicks down her clinic door. Marcus strolls in with a thick envelope from some fancy law firm. Joking about winning the lottery, he has no clue he is holding a live grenade. The mafia boss knows exactly how to hit her weakest spots. Watch this absolute madness unfold. Celine flashes this tight, totally fake smile at her patient, holding it together just long enough for the door to click shut. Then total meltdown. She bolts into a dark supply closet and rips open the trap. Inside is the holy grail for her clinic. We are talking $2 million up front, plus $500,000 every single year. Hidden in all that boring legal text is a handwritten note from Roman, promising 0 strings attached. But anyone watching a mob plot knows exactly how this goes down. There is no such thing as a free lunch when you are dealing with the syndicate. This is pure blood money, wrapped in a pretty bow. Here is your life lesson for the day. Your ironclad morals will shatter the very second someone hands you the exact cash you need to save your world. You can literally see the mental gymnastics happening as her hands shake. She signs the paper anyway, willingly walking right back into his toxic trap. She actually convinces herself the blood on those bills will just wash away if she uses it to save lives. That same night, her phone lights up. Guess who it is? The mafia prince himself. She tries to sound tough, telling him his dirty money cannot buy his way back into her life. But Roman is an absolute mastermind. His voice is super calm, playing the innocent routine. Then he hits her with the ultimate plot twist. He whispers that he just wanted to hear her voice. The bitter life lesson here. We build massive brick walls to protect our hearts, only to leave the front door wide open for the one person who knows exactly how to ruin us. The wildest part of this scene is his weapon of choice. Roman does not use lies. He uses raw, brutal honesty like a jagged knife. When she asks how he is getting out, he paints an insane picture of cutting ties with 6 rival families and dodging his dad's hitman. He even claims a recent car crash was a targeted hit. Look at the manipulation here, guys. He is framing himself as the tragic, wounded soldier. He knows Celine has a massive savior complex, and this sob story is a trap she cannot ignore. He begs for just 6 more months, playing her like a total pro. The terrifying life lesson. The most dangerous manipulators do not serve you obvious lies. They hand you perfectly sliced truths, making you bleed so much pity that you completely forget to protect your own neck. Let us look at how this guy builds a trap. Roman actually orders her to stay away. His voice gets quiet, talking about flying bullets and begging her to stay out of the mafia crossfire. Celine falls for it, assuming a guy warning her about danger must be a safe bet. It is a total masterclass in reverse psychology. By leaving the door open, he guarantees she will lock it herself. She grips the phone, claiming she hates him, but absolutely refuses to hang up. This is the insane reality of a trauma bond. The warden hands you the keys, and you lock yourself in the cell. The lesson is rough. Being self-aware will not save you. You can stare right at a massive raging fire, understand exactly how hot it is, and still walk straight into the flames. The world fades away as they spend 2 crazy hours pretending to be a normal couple. They talk about her clinic and his underground empire, burying the dark secrets under casual chit-chat. They build this suffocating glass bubble. A weekly phone call turns into a daily toxic obsession. The contrast is wild. He casually mentions dodging actual assassins, and she replies by complaining about her nursing schedule. Fast forward 3 weeks, and he shows up in Portland demanding to see her. See how quietly the poison slips into the water. The life lesson here is pretty bleak. We have a terrifying ability to normalize absolute chaos. We will weave the most dangerous habits right into our daily routine, simply because the deafening silence of being completely alone is way too loud to handle. Every survival instinct in her brain is screaming to run, but that trauma bond grabs the steering wheel, and she gives up her location. Picture this moody Portland sky by the river. Roman is sitting on a bench, completely stripped of his Mafia armor. No guys with guns, no scary suits. Celine sits down, keeping exactly 12 inches of space between them, like that is gonna stop a starving wolf. His dark eyes notice her new haircut, the classic sign of someone processing trauma. She quietly admits his millions hit her bank account. And here is the cruelest lesson of this whole vendetta. You can launder the stolen cash. You can trade the fancy silk suit for a beaten-up jacket. But you can never scrub the deep rot out of a soul that was raised by a literal monster. We are getting right in their faces for this emotional beat. Celine whispers about expanding her clinic, and Roman instantly promises to dump even more cartel cash on her. He waves off millions like it is pocket change, hiding the invisible handcuffs. Celine stares into his eyes looking for a lie, but only sees terrifying sincerity. She demands to know his real endgame. He leans in and hands her the exact emotional poison her broken heart craves. He confesses he is terrified of losing her. She shakes with hope, even as she warns him that sitting close does not equal forgiveness. He just nods like he practiced it. The vital life lesson? You and I have to judge a person by the actions they take, not the pretty poetry they speak. Words are just cheap masks for a predator to wear. Let us pause the video right here. Celine is not some clueless rookie. She knows a nice apology will not fix the brain of a literal hitman. She asks for space to see if his promises actually hold up. And Roman, he drops his weapons on the spot. He totally surrenders, acting happy to take whatever tiny crumbs of attention she gives him. It is an absolute masterclass in psychological warfare. Celine is desperate to believe this mafia boss has changed. But we all know violent habits do not vanish over a cloudy weekend. She decides to test his boundaries, praying for a miracle. But here is the hard truth for your life. Real redemption does not happen with grand speeches and dramatic music. It is built in the brutal, invisible grind of making the right choice every single day. She drops her ultimate threat. If the mafia psycho comes back, she is ghosting him forever. Roman swears he burned his old life down. But right in this frame, you can see the tiny cracks forming in her defense. It is the absolute beginning of the end. Her shaky fingers reach out and cover his hand. Roman looks down at it like he is holding the final piece of gold on earth. The silence between them is so heavy it practically chokes you. As her car drives away into the dark, Roman's face instantly twists into a super-calculated evil glare. For 2 whole weeks, she actually thinks she is safe. But write this life lesson down right now. Never mistake the creepy silence inside the eye of a hurricane for a clear sky. A real predator is just taking a breath before they start the absolute slaughter. That fake safety net shatters into pieces. Roman plays the ghost perfectly until Marcus drops an absolute bomb. The camera follows Celine's shaking hands as she finds out federal agents are ripping through her clinic bank records. They are circling like sharks. When Marcus admits the feds specifically named Roman, she looks like she saw a ghost. Her safe haven is totally ruined. Marcus tried to take the heat, but that paper trail is dripping with cartel blood. The mob rot has officially infected her life. Freaking out, she runs home, locks the door, and calls the devil himself. This is the ultimate climax of denial. Here is the lesson. It does not matter how fast you run if you refuse to cut the rope on a toxic anchor. It is guaranteed to drag you straight down to the bottom of the ocean. Let us dive right into this absolutely wild mafia drama. You and I picture Roman standing there like a statue. The silence in the room so heavy you can barely breathe. The feds are tearing his father's massive criminal syndicate down to the studs. And they are staring right at Roman to take the fall. Celine is shaking, totally furious that her charity clinic might get seized as a mob front. Roman swore his cash was completely clean, but a narcissist always finds a slick excuse for gambling with your life. To keep his iron grip on her, this guy pulls the ultimate manipulation tactic. He promises to snitch on his own flesh and blood. The huge lesson here is that a person's true colors never show up when things are easy and comfortable. You only see exactly who they are when their back is shoved hard against a cold brick wall. By offering to rat out the syndicate, Roman is basically signing his own death warrant. Celine stares at him, her blood running completely ice cold. Things are getting seriously dark in this insane toxic romance. The guy who ruined her life suddenly gets to play the noble hero, whispering that this is the only way to save her foundation. Celine is totally losing it, crying and wishing she could reject his dirty mafia money. She screams that his world is a massive black hole. Then Roman actually cracks, dropping a rare moment of vulnerability to beg for her trust. Listen up, because here is the real lesson. When a master manipulator asks for your blind trust while standing on the edge of a cliff, they do not want to save you. They just want to drag you right over the edge with them. Celine is literally shaking, demanding to know why she should ever trust the very architect of her downfall. Roman fires back with some completely twisted logic, claiming his love is the only safe place she has left. She whispers that love is simply not enough, and slams the phone down. What happens next is 3 agonizing days of total radio silence. Trust me, this is no accident. It is a highly calculated boss move designed to make her completely panic. On day 4, a friend tells her to check the news, and boom, the anchor drops a massive plot twist. Roman actually flipped and traded his loyalty for federal immunity. The guy is right there on screen at the courthouse. The lesson here hits hard. Silence from a toxic partner is almost never just empty space. It is a brutal psychological weapon, perfectly designed to absolutely crush your spirit. Looking at that television screen, they are framing Roman like some tragic action hero. The reporter confirms his testimony will absolutely destroy the mob, keeping Sea Line's clinic safe. He literally traded his own survival for hers, locking in that wild toxic savior complex. Celine simply collapses from sheer shock. Suddenly her phone rings, and it is Luca absolutely freaking out. He warns her that Roman just signed his own murder contract, because the underworld never forgives a rat. Stick with me on this one. You and I, because Scene's brain is totally scrambled. She starts viewing this betrayal as a deeply romantic gesture. Here is the tragic lesson. People will gladly romanticize their own mental prisons, as long as the beautiful cage was built by the person they desperately love. The tension is off the charts as Luca drops that massive reality check. This crazy suicidal sacrifice is exactly what Celine demanded from him. The guilt hits her like a freight train, completely driven by their intense trauma bond. She speeds through the dark city and bursts right into his apartment. Roman looks like a totally empty shell, but instead of yelling, Celine grabs him for a desperate tear-soaked kiss, pulling back. She screams that going rogue like this will get him absolutely slaughtered. Roman just nods calmly, weaponizing her own rule against her. He whispers he could not warn her because she strictly banned him from calling. Absolute checkmate. The lesson here is to watch your back. A master manipulator will always take your firmest boundaries and forge them into a brilliant weapon against you. Celine is hitting his chest, sobbing and screaming at him to drop the whole tragic martyr act. She is begging for the chance to make her own life choices. Watch his next move, because it is crazy. Roman gently grabs her shaking wrist. It looks like a sweet gesture, but it is a totally chilling display of dominance. He validates her anger, then flips right back to playing the savior. He whispers he could never let his dark mafia past ruin her bright future. He is literally wrapping his own death sentence up like a romantic gift. Celine cries, asking how she is supposed to live with that crushing guilt. His answer is straight up ice cold. He says her feeling guilty is way better than losing everything. Never forget this dark lesson. The easiest way for someone to steal your freedom is to convince you they are only doing it for your protection. That freezing logic completely shatters her mental shields. She collapses right into him, whispering that she hates his choices, but hates herself way more for loving him. Roman pulls her close, dropping these empty apologies. Then he lays out the insanely grim reality of the witness protection program. We are talking hidden safe houses, armed guards, non-stop court trials, and his entire identity wiped clean. Then when she asks if he will be doing this alone, Roman plays the noble card again, saying he would never ask her to ruin her life by tagging along. Celine snaps right back, telling him she only asked for his itinerary, not an invite. It is tough to watch her fight for a scrap of control in a trap he built. Here is the lesson. True power is not forcing someone to stay. It is masterfully tricking your captive into believing they hold the key to their own prison. We really need to unpack this major plot twist together. You and I, Celine pushes him away, demanding he finally admit what he actually wants, and just ask her to stay. Roman puts on this fake show of reluctance, before handing her exactly what she is begging for. The irony here is absolutely blinding. He is making massive romantic promises, while standing in the middle of a disaster he created. She should definitely see the red flags, but this intense toxic bond has totally warped her vision. She pictures them running off into the sunset, completely ignoring the fact that they are just running from a mob hit. When she agrees to his terms, her fate is totally sealed. It leaves us with a pretty haunting lesson. The absolute most dangerous lies we will ever encounter are the ones we actively beg other people to tell us. Trying to claw back some power, Celine sets down hard boundaries. She demands they act like total equals while they deal with the feds. Her final rule is honestly just a desperate plea, ordering him to fight for his life instead of rolling over. Roman nods eagerly, repeating her rules back like a perfectly trained soldier. He grabs her face in the dark, swearing he will prove he deserves her trust. When Celine tearfully jokes that she will end him herself if he dies, Roman lets out this totally genuine, surprising laugh. That one tiny sound of pure joy is the heavy anchor pulling her straight to the bottom. It is an incredibly scary tactic. The lesson here is that by dropping one tiny crumb of real happiness into a nightmare, a toxic person ensures you will drag yourself through hell just to taste it again. That mental cage is permanently locked. Let us freeze the frame right here, you and I, because this is where the trauma bond starts showing cracks. Up until tonight, these two were surviving strictly on pure adrenaline. Just look at how exhausted they are. The crazy energy is totally gone. Swapped out for heavy, brutal truths, Roman spills every gruesome detail about the crime family, putting all his guilt on the table. Celine fires back by exposing all her own mental damage, showing him she is definitely not some weak damsel in distress. They skip the sweet romantic stuff and go straight for raw, surgical honesty. Staying up until the sun rises, they rip apart the nasty secrets that destroy a relationship. The lesson is super clear. Sometimes the deepest intimacy you can ever have with someone is not physical at all. It is simply having the guts to let them look at your absolute ugliest scars. Right at 6 a.m, federal agents step out of the shadows, and that romantic fantasy is officially over. Celine watches Roman grab his bag. You can see his spine lock up, totally bracing for an ambush. He stops at the door and whispers that he loves her, sounding exactly like a dying man. "I love you too," she shoots back, telling him not to dare die on her. The marshals shove him into the car, leaving Celine drowning in this awful, heavy silence. She is literally gasping for air, absolutely terrified of the 6 months of total isolation coming her way. As the car disappears, the bitter irony of this whole deal hits. Getting free means Roman might actually catch a bullet. The lesson is brutal. There is no safe way to cut ties with a toxic world. Sometimes making the choice to heal feels exactly like walking blindfolded into a firing squad. Celine presses her shaking hand right against the freezing window glass. "Come back to me," she whispers to the empty apartment. Portland was supposed to be her ultimate safe zone, the one spot where she could finally fix her broken life. Instead, it feels exactly like the front lines of a massive mob war. She rings up Ivy and drops the insane truth. Roman is testifying against his own Mafia boss father. Celine goes terrifyingly cold, demanding to know exactly how to survive the underworld streets. She grabs her heavy winter coat, completely ready for battle. Ivy hears that dangerous edge in her voice and agrees to help, but drops a massive warning. Roman's dad is losing his mind, and the old rules are completely dead. The lesson to take away here is terrifyingly simple. When you back a literal monster into a corner, they will happily burn the entire world down just to keep their crown. The walls are literally closing in as Ivy drops the absolute worst-case scenario. If this ruthless syndicate figures out Celine is his weak point, they will use her to put him in the dirt. Celine grinds her teeth, swallowing that massive gut reaction to sprint in the opposite direction. Instead, she steps right out into the freezing rain, letting the cold shock her system back online. Most normal folks would totally freeze up when staring down pure evil, but not our girl. She refuses to be just another tragic side character. Marching through the downpour, her eyes go dead serious. She has exactly 6 months to build some bulletproof mental armor. The lesson here is loud and clear. When your whole world is burning down, taking one bold step forward is the only way to beat that paralyzing fear. Deep trauma completely rewires a person from the inside out. We are watching Celine totally ditch her soft healer vibe to become an absolute soldier. The naive girl is gone, swapped for a woman who knows love is useless if you lack the guts to defend it. Inside that sterile courtroom, she sits in the gallery like a stone statue. The heavy wooden doors slam open, and Roman is dragged inside looking like an absolute ghost. The man is wrecked from sleepless nights, shaking until his frantic eyes lock onto hers. In that split second, his wild panic turns into pure relief. Celine does not smile, she just drops one slow, heavy nod. It is a locked-in promise because honestly, real loyalty is not about sweet late-night whispers. It is proven by standing 10 toes down when the hurricane hits. Today you and I are going to unpack this absolute train wreck together. The tension in that courtroom is suffocating, while the lawyers rip this massive mafia family down to the studs. Up on the stand, Roman pulls the ultimate betrayal against his own blood. Trading his father's darkest secrets for a plea deal, the defense roasts him alive for hours, but Roman just sits there with this terrifying, deadpan calm. He does not blink as he lists out his own dirty deeds from the back row. Celine sees his tight shoulders finally relax. He is sweating out decades of pure mafia poison, but this nightmare is far from over. Down in the harsh lighting of the cafeteria, a heavy-hitting mob enforcer traps Celine in a corner. It leaves us with a totally brutal life lesson. Sometimes the absolute bravest thing you can do is completely cut off the toxic people who raised you. Victor slides into the chair across from her, wearing the fake smile of a total apex predator. He whispers that he just had to meet the girl who convinced Roman to nuke his own mafia empire. He is trying to dump all the blame for this ruined syndicate straight onto her lap. Celine is gripping her coffee cup so hard, her knuckles are pure white, but she does not break eye contact. She snaps back that Roman made his own choices. Victor just tilts his head, spinning some twisted sob story about Roman hurting innocent people. Celine fires right back, reminding him the mob drew blood first. Victor leans in close. Is this actually justice, or just petty revenge? The harsh life lesson here is that toxic people will always project their dirt, demanding you carry the heavy guilt for the total wreckage they caused. Just watch how insane this power dynamic gets. Victor is totally playing with his food here. He casually mentions his own daughter marrying Roman, like he is talking about the stock market. When he flashes a smile at Celine, it is completely hollow, zero warmth. Just pure mafia intimidation. Then he drops the absolute hammer. He says Roman is burning his whole empire down for a girl who will not even be alive long enough to watch the ashes fall. Celine throws up a totally brave front, leaning into the rage and straight up daring his hitmen to try their luck, but false confidence has a massive blind spot. The brutal lesson here is that acting tough does not make you dodge bullets. To truly unhinged people, your pulse means absolutely nothing. You are just a completely disposable pawn on a bloody chessboard, trapped in a sick game you never even asked to play. This is exactly how top-tier mob bosses operate. Victor does not even need to yell. He just slowly turns the psychological screws, whispering that she needs to vanish completely off the grid. He paints this miserable isolation as her only golden ticket out. When Celine snaps back that Roman would never fold on his principles, Victor lets out this creepy laugh that literally drops the room temperature. He knows Roman's blind obsession is the exact weakness that will put him in a body bag. Victor flat out promises to use Celine as the weapon that destroys Roman from the inside out. Once he finally slithers away, Celine is practically paralyzed. That shaking coffee cup gives away, her entire system crashing. It proves a terrifying life lesson. You can build up massive mental brick walls, but deep primal fear will always find a tiny crack and bring the whole house down. The most messed up thing about severe trauma is how fast it trains you to lie to your favorite people. Celine just swallows that death threat and completely zips her lips. Day after day, she sits in that suffocating courtroom, playing the supportive anchor while the feds rip Roman's whole life apart. You can literally watch the guy's soul leaving his body. Then Celanie's fragile safety bubble completely bursts. A coworker casually mentions a blacked-out sedan has been tailing her for 3 solid days. The mob's trap is officially snapping shut, but she still refuses to run. Staring point-blank at the end of her life, she just stands her ground. It reveals a seriously wild truth about human nature. Shared trauma creates bonds so unbelievably tight that we will gladly stand on the train tracks, watching the absolute wreck zooming toward us without even flinching. Ivy bursts back onto the scene, practically shaking Celine to snap out of it. She screams that playing chicken with a ruthless mafia family is not some romantic movie plot. It is straight-up suicide disguised as true loyalty. But Celine snaps back, claiming her old, boring life was basically a fake-out anyway. This is the ultimate trap of a damaged mind, convincing yourself you actually asked for the chains. As the hitmen circle closer, her routine becomes an absolute paranoid nightmare. She drives totally different routes home. She sleeps with Mace next to her pillow. Jumping at every floorboard creak, she puts on this massive front of being untouchable, while her inside alarms are blaring constantly. The takeaway is real. Faking that hardcore, fearless energy is always way more exhausting than just admitting you are absolutely terrified. Stick with me on this one, because this is where the plot twist hits hard. 6 brutal months pass. The crime syndicate gets completely gutted, and Roman walks out a free man. They finally link up in a gloomy public park, but do not expect a fairy tale ending. Federal agents are creeping in the tree line like they are watching zoo animals. Roman looks completely washed, flattened by his own Mafia history. He pulls her in and whispers that the worst is finally over. But Celine knows the sickening truth. Victor is still breathing, and he swore to hunt them down. She is so burnt out that surviving just feels like another chore. Roman knows witness protection is just a tiny paper bandage on a massive bullet hole. The reality check here hits different. Sometimes, running away from your absolute worst nightmare just means upgrading to a slightly bigger prison cell. Let us pause and really break this down. The concept of wiping your slate clean is just a massive cope. Roman sits her down and runs the cold, hard numbers. They can grab fake identities from the feds, or stay themselves and wait for a hitman to pull up. The absolute game changer here is that Roman gives Celine the remote control to her own life, a basic respect she never had before. She sits on that freezing park bench, holding her entire future. One path keeps her real name. The other means 50 years of checking her rearview mirror for Victor and his goons. Roman just stares at the dirt, begging for one single day of peace. No Mafia curses, no assassins. You and I might binge this kind of drama. But real life teaches a different lesson. True luxury is not millions of dollars. True luxury is just a quiet, boring Tuesday where nobody is plotting to take you out. Deleting your entire past is an absolutely brutal price tag. Celine completely wipes her old self off the map, following the exact same guy who dragged her into this mob war into witness protection. The feds dump them in this freezing Colorado ghost town. Say hello to Ryan and Sarah. They rock cheap wedding bands and fake their backstory over coffee. Roman picks up woodworking, swinging a hammer all day, just to stop thinking about the bodies his hands used to drop. Celine grabs a quiet gig at a clinic, using paperwork to drown out her internal screaming. For 3 tiny months, the absolute chaos actually starts to fade. They buy groceries, they sleep soundly. It is this beautiful, fake little bubble, but the takeaway slaps you in the face. You can fake your name and move 1,000 miles away, but until you face the demons in your own head, you are honestly just playing dress up. Look closely, because you and I are about to watch their illusion of safety completely shatter. Their quiet bubble pops the second a stranger walks into Celine's clinic, politely asking for her fake name. The guy looks like a boring professional, but his eyes are totally dead. Celine instantly spots the predator hiding behind that corporate smile. Then he drops the nuke. Victor already sliced right through their federal protection. The syndicate demands a massive payoff within 7 days to keep their secret buried. When the hitman leaves, Celine collapses against the wall, her hands shaking. The life lesson here is chilling but true. The monsters from your past do not need to kick down your front door when they already hold all the keys to your new life. The bitter truth they face here is that running from your history merely changes the address of your cage. Victor just turned the witness protection program into an absolute joke. Roman pushes through the clinic doors, his broad shoulders practically bowing under a massive, invisible weight. Celine whispers the new threat, and Roman steps outside to make one phone call. When he comes back, his face is totally ashen. He looks like he aged 10 brutal years in 5 minutes. The mob demands $2 million. Celine calls it straight-up extortion, her voice trembling. Roman sinks into a cold chair in utter defeat and simply calls it survival. Here is a simple, meaningful lesson. Chopping down the branches of a toxic tree means nothing if the poisoned roots are left to rot in the dirt. The camera lingers on the trap snapping shut around them. In this underworld, $2 million is never just a cash grab. Paying ransom is a permanent brand of submission. Celine and Roman sit bathed in gorgeous afternoon daylight, but you can tell they are suffocating inside a psychological coffin. Pay the extortion, flee into the night, or end up in a random ditch. The cops offer zero salvation against Victor, a ruthless predator who lives for the hunt. It honestly breaks your heart to watch the realization dawn in their eyes. The profound lesson here is unavoidable. You can never outrun a nightmare, because your fear is exactly what feeds the beast. You can change your city, but your location means nothing if you stay locked in the mental cage they built for you. Watch the lighting shift as Celine totally rebuilds her mindset. For years, her first instinct was to flee, believing distance equaled safety. But inside that clinic, the illusion shatters. She realizes the mob is a terminal virus, and her past testimony merely bought a temporary delay. Yet, instead of crumbling, her spine straightens. She meets Roman's desperate gaze and flat out declares she is done running. She absolutely refuses to play the perpetual victim anymore. She agrees to wire the cash, not as a surrender, but as a cold cost of doing business. The life lesson here is striking. True survival is rarely about discovering a perfectly safe place to hide. Sometimes, it is about planting your feet firmly in the danger zone and deciding your life is worth fighting for. Notice how claiming her agency becomes her ultimate armor. Celine admits the mark has been on her since Boston, fully owning their messy trauma bond. Confronting the terror is her weapon against feeling helpless. Roman searches her eyes for panic, but finds nothing except unyielding stone. They wire the $2 million offshore, fully aware that a sociopath word is absolute dust. They are basically just purchasing a little more sand in the hourglass. Fade in 6 months later. Celine opens a bright community clinic, forging her nightmares into a sanctuary for the broken. There is a powerful life lesson here. You cannot always scrub the painted target off your back, but you can absolutely choose what beautiful things you build, while standing directly in the crosshairs. This clinic is Celine's quiet rebellion against the Mafia's empire of death. She wages war on violent predators by healing the defenseless. When Roman steps into the frame, the transformation of this former enforcer is staggering. Celine gently asks if he regrets the ashes they left behind. Roman's voice breaks. He confesses he only grieves for the decades wasted on his dad, a narcissist who poisoned every soul he touched. But here is the plot twist. Roman does not regret burning his violent kingdom to the ground to hold her. He rebuilt his ruined soul to become a man capable of pure love. The vital life lesson hits hard here. The toxic environment you were raised in does not dictate your destiny. You can always choose to walk away from a poisonous legacy, no matter the cost. Let us step behind the lens. Today, you and I are going to unpack this tragedy together. Celine always knew safety was an illusion, especially with Vittorio hunting them. The mob boss is a megalomaniac weaponizing surveillance to mentally shatter his victims. When she asked if the terror would ever fade, Roman's answer was devastating. He admitted the assassins would probably never stop coming, but his wild solution? Build a breathtaking life anyway. They opened that clinic fully aware a bullet could shatter the glass at any second. It was a spectacular rejection of living on their knees. They understood falling in love meant handing the enemy a loaded weapon, but they chose each other anyway. The life lesson is simple. Pure love is the ultimate defiance against the dark. This choice is a desperate clawing at their lost humanity. Celine's hand finds Roman's. These are the same hands that once tore her life apart, now working to stitch it back together. They drive home, swallowing the bitter bile of survivor's paranoia. The life lesson is haunting. Eventually, the mind must choose fragile trust over endless panic, or madness will swallow you whole. They sit by the fire, murmuring about mundane stuff like clinic charts. Honestly, that boring whisper is their greatest triumph. The scene gets dark when Luca's text message illuminates the screen. Celine views his stalking as twisted loyalty. But the tragic truth is, Luca is suffocating in Stockholm Syndrome. He is completely paralyzed, unable to sever ties with the monstrous Mafia family that ruined him. The camera catches a twitch in Roman's jaw. He recognizes Luca's sick loyalty instantly because that exact disease used to run through his own veins. He knows how serving a toxic empire will quietly rot your soul. Beside him, Celine breathes deeply, locking her horrific memories into a mental vault. The brutal trials, the hidden cameras, the smirking mob boss who shattered them. She buries it all. They are performing their own brutal exposure therapy, proving that healing is an exhausting, everyday war. Their whispered confessions in the dark are not cheap romance. They are the desperate prayers of survival. They are forcefully rewiring their traumatized minds. The beautiful life lesson shines through the gloom. You can always choose to trust the light, even when your dark past begs you to fall. Stick with me, we need to freeze the frame right here. Study this agonizing contrast. Two former pawns of a bloody mafia underworld waking up to what? Not the crack of a sniper rifle, not the screech of getaway tires, just a scarred man humming a tune, measuring sugar into a coffee mug for Celine, whose nervous system is hardwired for raids. The profound silence actually feels physically threatening, yet it is the exact medicine she needs. She pulls on his discarded flannel, a makeshift armor of intimacy and pads, into the kitchen. They stand in the pale dawn light, two haunted ghosts pretending to be ordinary mortals. Their ultimate reward for surviving hell is just the grace of a quiet cup of coffee. The simple life lesson? True peace usually hides in the most mundane, overlooked moments. The camera pans to a rusted junker coughing to life, revealing a bitter cosmic joke. These two once operated in the shadow of a boss who treated blood money like pocket change. Now, they commute in a dying car, choosing poverty because the air finally feels clean. Roman hypes up their clinic, acting like a general marshalling his troops. But Sea Lion's eyes reflect a wiser truth. You do not save the rotting world, you merely hold space. So a few broken souls feel less invisible. When they pull up, they find absolute chaos, dozens of desperate people, shivering in the freezing cold. Celine wades right into the suffering without a single flinch. Here is a profound life lesson. The truest way to mend your own shattered spirit is to gently bandage the bleeding wounds of others. Focus the lens on Roman behind this flimsy intake desk. Here sits a guy bred to inherit a bloody crime family, now gripping a cheap clipboard, playing an ordinary citizen. The contrast is amusing, until the raw tragedy of life kicks the doors open. A terrified girl drags her sibling into the lobby, the kid violently gasping for oxygen, an asthma attack, in a fair world a simple fix. But in this forgotten town, poverty is an execution order. Sea Lion's face turns to unreadable stone. She operates with the precision of a machine. Even though her inner child is screaming, she administers the medicine and watches the terrified lungs finally draw breath. She masks it as routine. The simple lesson is moving. Sometimes, pulling another soul from the abyss is the only way to pull yourself back. Look at this, guys. The most agonizing frame drops right here. This frantic mom is digging through her pockets, totally bracing for a brutal shakedown. She flinches, expecting this cruel world to crush her flat, but Celine just casually shakes her head. The medicine is completely free. As the mom collapses into sobs, the real plot twist hits us. Celine is not just treating a stranger, she is reaching back through time, saving the terrified little girl she used to be later. They drag their exhausted bones back to their hideout. No massive victory feast, just Roman quietly starting a fire in the dark. It honestly hits you with a real truth. Redemption is rarely some massive spectacle. Most of the time, it is just the quiet, gentle act of sharing a piece of bread with someone you genuinely love. Let us step into the room together and watch this unfold. The camera lingers on Roman, with firelight painting shadows across his face. He asks if this piece is actually real, or if they are just hiding from the Mafia monsters who made them. This guy used to be a literal human weapon. Now he thinks wanting a quiet life makes him a coward. But Celine marches over and grabs his shoulders with an iron grip. She tells him straight up, walking away from a bloody destiny is never running away. It is taking your soul back. We so often mistake our familiar toxic cages for our true identities, just because we know the shape of the bars. But real courage, that is picking the lock, leaving all that darkness in the dirt, and finally daring to step out into the warm sun. The camera pushes right in as she locks eyes with him, completely shredding his guilt. She whispers that craving peace is not cowardice, it is raw, bleeding survival. The suffocating tension in Roman finally shatters. He pulls her tight against his chest, shaking his head at the wild insanity that they are somehow still breathing. His laugh is heavy, dragging 10 years of buried Mafia nightmares out of his lungs. The lights click off, plunging the room into a deep cinematic blue. Celine is lying wide awake. She stares at the ceiling, replaying their crazy escapes, and then the massive realization hits her. It was never dumb luck. They carved this sanctuary with their own 2 hands. Healing is never just some gentle wave that washes over you. It is a brave, conscious choice you have to wake up and fight for every single day. Let us pause the frame right here. You and I running away from Mafia violence is simple, compared to the terrifying ordeal of learning to trust broken. People often stay broken because the familiar dark feels way safer. Trusting someone is literally handing them a loaded weapon and praying they do not pull the trigger. The film suddenly jumps 3 years forward. The lighting goes bright and warm. Celine is standing on a public stage, grabbing an award with zero camouflage. No fake identities, no hiding. The wild tragedy of love is that it leaves your chest totally exposed to a fatal strike. But if you lock your heart away just to survive, you turn yourself into a walking ghost, dead before you even hit the ground. They knew the absolute massive risks of being truly seen, and they bravely chose to embrace life anyway. The camera blurs the mayor, fading his voice to static. The lens snaps focus onto Celine, whose eyes are locked on Roman. The visual upgrade on this guy is staggering. He used to sit in dark corners ready to snap a neck now. That heavy Mafia armor has totally melted off his shoulders. Next to him are Ivy and Marcus, former hitmen playing a quiet suburban family. After Celine grabs her plaque, the real emotional gut punch hits backstage. Roman leans in, whispering how insanely proud he is. But Celine gently shakes her head. reminding him they poured this solid foundation together. It is a huge reminder that true partnership means carrying the heavy weight as one. You have to share your quiet victories just as deeply as your hidden pain. Roman does not miss a single beat. He whispers that she saved his life first. You can feel that crazy unspoken memory hanging in the air. That blood-slicked night when he dragged his torn-up body into her emergency room. Celine smiles, eyes shining. It feels like some dark mafia tragedy starring two completely different people. She touches his scarred face, swearing she would not trade a single agonizing second. That brutal river of blood led them straight to this exact hour. He pulls her in, kissing her deeply while the town erupts into applause. To Celine, that cheering sounds like fate finally throwing up the white flag. Later that night, his hand rests gently on her stomach. For the first time in years, her brain stops bracing for a violent attack. It shows us that true peace really is the absolute quietest victory of all. Pay close attention to this beat in the dark shadows of their bedroom. Roman softly asks what she is thinking about. Celine turns and casually detonates a psychological nuke. She wants a baby. The camera locks onto Roman, as this hardened mafia enforcer turns to solid stone. You can watch his nervous system totally short-circuit. The silence stretches out, thick and suffocating. When he finally speaks, his voice completely shatters. He confesses he never once pictured a future that did not end in a bloody grave. A family was a total myth for a hitman like him, but he looks at her, eyes shining, and whispers that he actually wants to try. It teaches us something profound. No matter how deep our trauma gets, the human soul is always desperate to nurture and create. They fall asleep holding on tight, finally daring to believe in a real happy ending. 6 months pass and fate drops its quiet verdict. 2 stark lines on a pregnancy test. The camera frames Celine on those freezing bathroom tiles, completely consumed by blinding joy, mixed with absolute terror. The dark shadow of Vittorio, the ruthless mob boss who swore to ruin her, flickers through her mind, but she takes a massive breath, forcing that ugly fear right back into its cage. It is a huge reminder that we absolutely cannot let old ghosts dictate our current happiness. When she hands Roman that test later, the scene is pure vulnerability. This legendary enforcer, a guy who never blinked at a loaded shotgun, completely shatters. Heavy tears carve down his scarred face as he pulls her close. Repeating the words like a desperate prayer, he is absolutely terrified, but for the very first time in his violent life, he is hopelessly and beautifully happy. Freeze the frame right here. They should be basking in the pure joy of a new baby, but Celine is constantly scanning the dark corners, convinced the Boston mob is coming for blood. The lighting stays intensely oppressive. Every clinic visit feels like a psychological war zone. Roman steps up as her anchor, absorbing her panic while waiting for Vittorio to strike. But check out this bleak irony of fate. They spend 8 grueling months bracing for a catastrophic mafia war. And the legendary kingpin Vittorio? He does not go out in an epic blaze of bullets. His cruel heart simply stops beating in his sleep. A completely pathetic biological failure. All that insane terror was wasted on a frail old man quietly expiring in the dark. It proves that sometimes the absolute worst monsters we fear the most just naturally fade into nothingness on their very own. Let us observe Luca for a second. He is totally severed from the mob, yet he still lingers around like a ghost, guarding the syndicate that kept a collar around his neck. It is a terrifying picture of trauma bonding. But Luca actually delivers the final saving grace. He tells them the new regime has zero interest in ancient mafia blood feuds. The invisible noose finally dissolves. 2 weeks later, the movie erupts into glorious chaos as Celine goes into full labor. Watch this brilliant contrast. Roman, a guy who used to orchestrate assassinations with a flat pulse, is white-knuckling the steering wheel. He speeds through the night, drowning in genuine panic. It reveals a beautiful, terrifying truth. Your thickest emotional armor completely shatters into dust, the exact second you finally get something truly precious to lose. Celine glances from the passenger seat, gripping the dashboard through a brutal contraction, and actually laughs. She gasps that he was supposed to be the steady one, while Roman is sweating through his shirt. It is an amazing release of tension. The camera cuts to the soft hospital lights at 3:47 in the morning, capturing the birth of their daughter. They name her Hope, and honestly, it is no empty cliché. Hope was the gritty force that kept them swinging, when surrendering would have been way easier. When Roman cradles that fragile life, the last shadow of the ruthless mobster physically melts off his jawline. He whispers a desperate vow to forever shield her from the dark terrors of his past. This powerfully proves that our most violent, Broken chapters never have to dictate our final ending. The timeline shifts 5 years ahead, framing a perfect irony. Celine, who once flinched at shadows, now commands a huge medical empire. Roman stands beside her, balancing Little Hope on his hip, while their son yanks on her coat. The camera catches the same defiant fire in the boy's eyes his father once used for mob wars. Roman surveys the beautiful chaos of their life. He turns to his wife, speaking with quiet reverence. He tells her she completely rewrote the tragic script the world tried to force on them. She took their shattered pieces and forged pure gold. We are often told that severe trauma defines us forever, but this ending proves otherwise. We are never permanent hostages to our circumstances. We all possess the raw power to build a beautiful new life directly over the ashes of our violent past. The camera pushes right in on Roman, and you can see this massive realization wash over his face. For a guy literally bred for violence since he was a kid, quiet peace feels exactly like a ticking time bomb. He honestly believed his bloody rap sheet meant he did not deserve a happy ending. But then Celine slides her fingers right through his. It is a physical reminder that they crawled through hell to earn this moment. Later, the shot pulls back, framing them on a quiet porch under a huge night sky. We can either let our deepest scars turn us into monsters, or use them to build a sanctuary. The past is only a cage if you lock it yourself. But just as things get peaceful, Roman drops a nuke. He looks at her and asks, "Do you ever think about Boston?" Stick with me here, because we need to unpack this twisted dynamic. Celine takes a sip of wine and casually drops that she actually misses the chaotic rush of the emergency room. That raw addiction to adrenaline is exactly why she matches a former Mafia don. The vibe flips cold when Roman pulls out a letter from the government. They are thanking him because his father's criminal syndicate is wiped off the map. But look at Roman's eyes, total dead space. Taking out his bloodline was never about playing the hero. It was a calculated slaughter to make sure nobody could threaten Celine again. Sometimes people do the right thing for the most ruthless reasons. You simply have to learn how to live with the ghosts you created. Just watch how masterfully Celine completely flips the script here. When Roman starts questioning if his twisted motives ruin their happy ending, she hands him a bulletproof emotional shield. She reframes him burning a crime family to ash as a massive win for the world, ignoring the dark reasons he pulled the trigger. She looks at a hitman and compares him to a protective mother bear. It is an insane level of mental gymnastics to justify loving a killer, but it works perfectly. Roman pulls her close, holding on like a drowning guy grabs a life raft. Her validation keeps him from going insane. It leaves us with a heavy life lesson. Real love is not about finding someone flawless. It is about finding that person who stares into your ugliest sins and still decides you are worth saving. A whole decade flies by in their safe bubble, but the universe always collects its debt. An invitation shows up for Celine to speak at a medical conference in Boston, the absolute ground zero for her nightmares. The camera lingers on her shaking fingers as she almost rips the paper, but Roman steps out of the shadows, puts a hand on her shoulder, and pushes her into the fire. He tells her she must go back and prove that scared nurse is dead for good. The second she steps off the plane, Boston hits her like a punch. The freezing wind bites her skin, and those gray streets start suffocating her. Facing your demons is never pretty, but running means they own you forever. You literally have to walk right back into the dark, just to prove you are strong enough to stand in the light. You and I really need to appreciate the brutal irony in this scene. After crushing her presentation, Celine wanders the freezing sidewalks like a sleepwalker. Pure muscle memory drags her to the exact hospital where her old life was ripped apart. She stands alone under a buzzing street lamp, watching the emergency room rush, and it suddenly clicks. The old Celine was a hostage living in permanent panic. The new Celine took that exact bloody trauma and used it to build an absolute empire. But right as she turns to walk away, the universe throws a massive left hook. She bumps right into Dr. Reeves, a walking ghost from her worst nightmare. Life has a funny way of testing you the second you let your guard down. It throws your past in your face just to see if you still flinch. In this insanely tense chat with Reeves, Celine stares her tragic past dead in the eye. When he brings up the bloody night she vanished, the edit flashes back to Roman bleeding on her table. But here is the best part, her heart rate does not even spike. Zero panic. She realizes that horrific night was not a nightmare. It was the painful spark she needed to escape a hollow life. She turns down his offer, walks away, and shatters that final chain. Cut to her touching down in Colorado. Spotting Roman and the kids waiting by the gate, The visual contrast is wildly beautiful. When he asks about Boston, she gives a genuine smile. The monster under the bed is dead. You cannot control terrible events, but you hold the power to completely rewrite what your darkest memories actually mean. Let us take a second to frame this massive victory. The lighting gets soft as Celine confesses that the terrified girl she used to be feels like a total stranger. When Roman asks if she went back to that haunted hospital, she drops the ultimate proof of healing. She felt absolutely nothing. No panic attacks, no crying. It was just a boring, cold brick building. That is what real closure looks like. You do not forget the bleeding. You just stop letting the trauma live in your head rent-free. Later, they are swaying together in the dim shadows of their kitchen, admitting how crazy it is that they are alive. By Mafia rules, they should be dead. Instead, Roman holds her tight. His ruthless predator instinct now completely locked in on protecting his family every single day. As we close the file on Roman and Celine, the camera slowly pulls back. Outside their window, those jagged mountains are swallowed by the freezing darkness. But inside, soaked in warm light, sit two deeply broken people who actively choose to trust each other instead of burning the world down. Real survival is never just about dodging that first bullet. It is the million tiny choices you make every morning to keep the shadows from pulling you under. Celine started this wild ride as a terrified hostage in a getaway car. Now, she is the boss of her own destiny. The greatest thing anyone can do is not just walking out of the flames alive, it is having the guts to stand barefoot in the smoldering ashes, and actively choosing to build a life truly worth fighting for.
The ending of the story is powerful because it is not about luxury, revenge, or dramatic victory. Celine and Roman's true success is ordinary life. A small house, a clinic, children, community, work, coffee in the morning, and peace they had to fight hard to earn. This teaches a beautiful lesson. Happiness is not always loud. Sometimes the greatest victory is waking up beside someone you trust, going to meaningful work, helping people, raising a family, and living without pretending to be someone else. Celine and Roman do not get a perfect life. Danger still exists. Their past does not completely disappear. People from Roman's old world can still threaten them. But they choose not to let fear become the center of their future. They choose to build anyway. That is the educational message. A meaningful life is not created in one grand moment. It is built through daily choices. Choosing honesty. Choosing service. Choosing responsibility. Choosing to stay when staying is right. Choosing to leave when leaving is necessary. Choosing love, but not love without courage. Roman learns that redemption is a practice. Celine learns that strength does not mean never being hurt again. It means knowing your worth even after pain. Together, they create a life that is not based on power, secrecy, or fear, but on truth and purpose. Their daughter, Hope, becomes a symbol of everything they survived. Hope does not mean life will be easy. Hope means believing that something good can still grow from broken ground. The final lesson is simple and deeply human. We cannot always escape the past, but we can choose what we build after it. And sometimes, the most powerful ending is not becoming untouchable. It is becoming whole.